North Korea confirmed that it carried out its third nuclear test in recent months. On February 12, the move was in defiance of several UN Security Council resolutions and brought quick condemnation from the United States, South Korea, China, and other nations.
VOA's correspondent at the United Nations is Margaret Besheer. I talked with Margaret about this latest provocation by North Korea and what it means to the United Nations and the world.
Right now, the talks are really between the United States and China on a bilateral level. And the two countries will sort of hammer out some sort of deal, and the U.S. will do it in close consultation with its allies, South Korea and Japan. And so once the U.S. and China can come to an agreement about new sanctions, then they will bring it back to the other permanent members of the Security Council, France, Russia, and the United Kingdom. And then it will go back to the rest of the council. It's a 15-member council, as you recall, and 10 of those council members have rotating membership. So we have 10 council members, including South Korea. South Korea just joined the council in January, and they actually are the president in February. So those countries will then pretty much go along with it. I think in most negotiations in the Security Council, if the permanent 5 members can agree, then usually the other 10 go along with it.
And why has North Korea been able to reach this point of actually testing nuclear weapons? It seems like there's been a much harsher stance taken toward Iran.
Well, definitely the sanctions are very tough on Iran. They've had a great impact on the Iranian economy. We've seen certainly on the economy in Iran. The last round of sanctions a couple years ago really went after financial institutions that were financing the nuclear industry. But at the same time, we just saw recently that Iran tried to buy 100,000 magnets to be used for nuclear centrifuges from China. So sanctions don't stop the activity. They don't, and we know that. They slow it down. Iran hasn't pushed it to the point of testing, maybe because they're a little more concerned that Russia and China may not support them. Whereas with North Korea, China has a stake in it. They have to, deal with it a little more carefully because it's in their backyard.
Now, getting back to North Korea and the reasons that it gave for this recent testing, it said that the test was just its quote, first response to what it described as U.S. threats. What are these threats that North Korea is referring to?
Well, I think, North Korea often cites these threats in speeches and such and rhetoric. They feel that, the United States is supporting South Korea, which is their enemy. They hark back to the 1950s, to the Korean War. Recently, there were military naval maneuvers in the region between South Korea and the United States, so that's certainly meant to send a message to North Korea that we're watching you. So they consider this hostile, and don't forget there's 25,000 U.S. troops still in South Korea, so that makes them nervous, the North Koreans. It also makes China nervous. They don't like to see the American presence in their neighborhood.
And when it comes to the UN response to this, what are the options right now that we're seeing on the table?
Well, certainly we're not seeing military options, that's for sure. So what does that leave us? That leaves sanctions and more sanctions in the UN toolbox. So right now there's already a pretty strong arms embargo, asset freezes. There are travel bans against individuals in North Korea. So now we're going to see a real tightening of the screws, I think. There'll be new individuals and entities added to these lists. Already ships are being stopped and searched. North Korean ships are stopped and searched under sanctions. Perhaps we'll see a tightening of the monitoring of the sanctions regime, some sort of way to make sure that all countries are cooperating, that, for instance, maybe Syria or Iran or China, won't be able to violate these sanctions as we've had indications of in the past. So I think those are the main things that you'll see. You'll see new individuals and entities added to lists. You'll see a tightening of existing sanctions, but they're going to have to bite a bit. So we'll see what the Council comes up with.
Thanks to Margaret Besheer, VOA's correspondent at the United Nations.